if you've been thinking about getting into freelancing as a creative, you may have also wondered about the particular freelancing field you should choose. Now, there are a lot of freelance job titles out there, so this can be pretty overwhelming if you're just getting started. But in today's video, I wanted to talk about 5 freelancing skill ideas for creatives and why you should consider them. In this video, we'll go through 5 popular freelancing skill sets and roles and talk about some of the opportunities associated with them. But for those of you who are new here, my name is Kaylee and I'm a beauty and fashion photographer based near Sydney, Australia. But I'm also a content creator and I started this channel a few years ago to talk about all things business, social media, freelancing and content creation. But as I mentioned, this video today is going to be all about freelancing and some of the particular skill sets you might want to consider if you're a creative. So as I also mentioned, I am a freelance photographer and I've been freelancing for quite a number of years now. So I've actually been freelancing from around 2011 or so, just after getting out of school and started to take on some paid jobs as a photographer. But in terms of full-time freelancing, I've been doing that since 2018. So it's been a really long journey for me to get into full-time freelancing, but obviously everyone is different and everyone has their own obstacles in their way of doing things and moving forward with things like this. But for me, it was a long journey with photography, especially because I had a specific type of genre that I wanted to do, and that was beauty and fashion. And that is not the easiest genre of photography to get into. You will have a lot more luck getting into things like weddings and family portraits. And unfortunately for me, getting into fashion and beauty was a little bit more difficult and a little bit more time consuming. So coincidentally, the first topic we're actually going to be talking about today and the first freelancing skill that I'm actually going to mention is going to be photography. Now, there are so many things you can do as a freelance photographer. There are so many genres. And of course, being a freelance photographer, I absolutely recommend this. If you are in any way obsessed or love photography, you love taking photos, I think that this is definitely a career path that can go into many, many different opportunities. So doing freelance photography, as I said, can look like many different things and it can be across many different categories. And you don't necessarily have to just stick to one category, you can do several as well. The great thing about being a freelance photographer is you can do things like work for brands, you can do things like stock and licensing with your images, so you're not necessarily having to reach out to brands or work with brands face to face so much. You can kind of do it from more of a licensing standpoint where you have your images licensed online through certain agencies or platforms and you can actually earn money that way. Then of course you can move away from the commercial side of things and do things like weddings and family portraits and that kind of thing. So I think that there's so many different genres you can potentially pick up with photography, and it really depends on what your passions are, what you really enjoy taking photos of, as to where you might want to place your skill sets with freelance photography. And I've got another couple of categories down here that you might just want to consider as well, because these categories tend to have quite a lot of work going for them. They tend to have a never-ending kind of workload, so there's always work going for these kinds of jobs, and I wanted to include them as well because I think that for anyone who may be just a beginner photographer looking at getting into this, you may be more concerned with knowing how likely you are to get stable work out of it. So I wanted to mention real estate. I think real estate photography is something that's a really good skill set to have because there are always job offers for real estate photographers and for freelance real estate photographers. Oh my goodness, I feel like that will be a never-ending workload ever. So if you are interested in doing things like real estate photography and architecture, definitely something to consider as a skill set if you are thinking about freelance photography. Another thing I wanted to mention was e-commerce photography. So again, never-ending workload. There are so many websites out there, fashion websites especially, will need things photographed. So clothing, every week they're getting stock in, they need clothing photographed, they need shoes photographed, they need accessories photographed. It is never ending. I have actually worked in this industry for a little while and I definitely know as an e-commerce retoucher and having done some e-commerce photography as well that the work just never stops. So there's always jobs going for that kind of thing. And again, if you're looking for that consistency with freelance photography, this is something else that you might want to consider. And I'm just going to add another category in as product photography. So again, this can be really connected with e-commerce photography, but product photography is a really popular one these days. There's always new products coming out onto the market. So it does make it easier for more consistent work if you get really good at a genre like that. And of course, as I mentioned, weddings can be very lucrative as well. You would definitely need a lot of time to develop a portfolio when it comes to weddings though. And I think it's definitely worthwhile in the end if that's the kind of photography you love to do. And again, usually you will have a lot of consistency with that sort of thing. Although, however, it's also important to note that there is an off season with wedding photography a lot of the time, being winter. There generally don't tend to be as many weddings during that time frame. So it is important to consider things like that when you're thinking about the photography genre that you might want to get into. But as I mentioned, there's a lot of photography genres out there that are a great skill set to develop because you will find that there's a lot of consistent work for some of those categories and genres. So definitely something to consider if you are looking at getting into freelancing as a creative and you really enjoy photography. There are a lot of different opportunities through those fields. Now, the next freelancing skill idea is video editing, and video editing is a really great one these days. It's become more and more popular over the past decade, and I think that really a lot of people need video editors, especially when you're talking like YouTubers that want to outsource their video editing, videos for social media content and e-commerce sites. Again, there is really endless work for video editors out there, and even for someone like myself who is a YouTuber, I feel like if my current workload continued on the way it is, I would probably need to outsource because video editing can be very time consuming, and as someone who is making YouTube videos all the time as well as having to do a lot of other things for her business, I feel that outsourcing video editing is something that a lot of YouTubers tend to do these days, and video editors are highly sought after even through brands and companies, and especially for e-commerce sites and social media, as I was mentioning before. So again, it's a really popular skill set to try and develop if you really enjoy editing videos, or if you really feel like you're quite good at it and you can develop the skill even further, or you could potentially pitch out in terms of freelancing. I think that this is a really great skill set as well to have these days. Really, really good. Even if you know photography and video really well, it's a really great pairing to have, especially as a freelancer. But video editing is definitely something that's not going to be going away at any time soon, and there are a lot of people out there who need their videos edited. Now, the next freelancing skill idea for creatives is a social media assistant or coordinator. Now, again, a lot of individuals or brands out there will need someone to coordinate their social media channels, or if not coordinating necessarily, they will want you to create content for them. So again, if you have really good skill sets with photo and video and social media in general, this is a really, really good skill set to have because again, social media is not going anywhere. This is a job that probably didn't exist 10 years ago, but does today. And I really think it is going to be the way of the future, having content creators fill these roles, especially in freelance roles. And I think a lot of people, again, will start to outsource their content creation to these kinds of creatives. So being a social media assistant could look like producing photography, videography, editing both photo and video, and captioning, and also scheduling. So not only sort of capturing all of that content for specific social media feeds, but then also being able to schedule everything and plan everything out in the best way possible. So having a really good grasp on social media and knowing the trends, knowing what is popular at any given point is really, really important if you want to kind of go down this route. It's really easy to think that being a social media assistant is an easy job, but I think there's a lot more to it, and it really does come down to marketing and knowing marketing pretty well and knowing brands and social media well too. So it's something to keep in mind if you're looking at pursuing this kind of skill set for freelancing, but I definitely feel like it's something that would never get boring. There's always something new to do or to create through social media content creations. So I think as a freelance social media assistant, you'd have a lot of fun things going on at any given point. The next freelance skill idea is graphic design, and you can use a number of programs to become a graphic designer and to create your graphics. So you can use more basic platforms like PixArt or Canva, or then you can also use more professional programs like Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator, Adobe InDesign. And those three programs I just listed are usually the industry standard for graphic designers these days. But having said that, design has come a really long way in the last decade, and it's become a lot more accessible and easy for people to create graphics now online. So it's good to be across a lot of different platforms with this. And again, I think it's a really great option for freelancing because there are so many brands out there that require graphic designers. And again, I just feel like there is no shortage of work when it comes to this. So if you feel like you're good at design and you want to improve your skill set there and you want to do more with that, being a freelance graphic designer, I guess, is a great way to capitalize on that and to start earning money from that as well. And again, like some of the other ideas I've mentioned here today, I'm trying to mention some fields that have a lot of work going in them and that are not necessarily on their way out, so to speak. So I feel like a lot of the skill sets I've mentioned today are really not going anywhere, and there's a lot of potential work out there for each of these skill sets. And then the last freelancing idea I'm going to talk about today is copywriting. So copywriting is really great if you have a way with words, or if you've got really good grammar, you've got good punctuation, you can write well. Copywriting is a really good skill set to have. Again, copywriting can fit into so many different fields. Basically, all of the fields out there need some form of copywriting, and especially on social media these days, this is becoming a bigger thing, but also on websites, copywriting can basically be applied to any anything. It can really be creative or it can be technical. And as I mentioned, you could be writing anything from web content and e-commerce captioning to writing whole articles or blogging for an individual or brand. There are so many categories that this can fit into, and again, it is a really good skill set to have as a creative. If you feel like you're a really great writer, this is definitely somewhere where you can apply those skill sets and start to earn money. So I think it's a really great freelancing skill idea. I know so many brands and so many companies out there that have copywriters. Like, I feel that 99% of brands or companies out there actually need copywriters. So definitely something to look into, and there's definitely no shortage of work. Well, I hope you really enjoyed this video today on some freelancing skill ideas for creatives. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, make sure you do, because I'll be posting a lot more videos in future. Let me know down in the comments section below if you've tried any of these freelancing fields, or if you have skill sets in any of the categories I talked about today, or if you have any advice or suggestions for different freelancing fields for creatives. Feel free to put them in the comments section below too. But thank you so much as always for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.